guys, it's Webby. Welcome back to another video. Today is a car I've been looking forward to filming for such a long time. It's been around in other countries for probably a year or so now, but here in Australia the Volkswagen Golf MK8 hasn't been around very long. Now a lot of videos I've seen on YouTube have been about the GTI, they've been about the R line, but I thought I'd do something a little bit different and actually do the base model. I couldn't find any other videos about the base model on the internet. So I thought, well, why not do something a little bit different and show you what you actually get for your base money if you just want to get something fairly basic, or if your budget only allows for a certain amount of money, and actually show you what you get on the entry-level Golf. So today's video is basically going to show you around that entry-level car. So I've got one here very kindly lent to me by Volkswagen. This is their demonstrator that they've lent me for the weekend. So I'm going to show you around the car and tell you my thoughts. Now I have to start off by saying I am a big fan of the Volkswagen Golf. I've owned about 7 of them, so I guess that gives you some sort of idea. I've even got a Mark 7.5 GTI at the moment that I own. So yeah, big fan of the Golf. So coming from looking at my 7.5 and then looking at the 8, there's obviously quite a big difference between the two cars. The exterior styling has changed, but the bigger changes have been on the inside of the car. Well, the dashboard is quite different, the centre console is quite different. They've even got different gearboxes on the standard models. So there are quite a lot of changes between the 7.5 and the 8. So we'll start off on the outside and look at the exterior styling. I have to be honest, when I first saw photos of the Golf MK8 appearing on the internet as spy shots and camouflage, test mules and things like that, I wasn't really sure about the looks of the car. This sort of new style headlight design reminded me a little bit of a Toyota Corolla. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, it didn't kind of look like a Golf to me. The shape of the headlights and the front were a little bit, I'm not too sure about that. Probably a bit like the BMW M3 and M4 that everybody now sort of accepts is the new design. Over the time that I've seen the car, you get up close to the car, and it starts to sort of grow on you a little bit. I wouldn't say it's quite as good looking as the 7.5. I think the 7.5 has been one of the best looking Golfs for many a year. Not one of the reasons I own one, but I just think it's one of the best looking Golfs they've ever made. So this has definitely grown on me. The styling is pretty inoffensive. I mean, it's a Golf after all. Golfs are one of those do everything cars. They don't do anything spectacular, and they're not outlandish with their styling. They are very safe and typically German in the way to style and do things. I actually think it's quite a good looking car. It looks a little bit dull in this silver finish. It's not an exciting colour. It would be nice to see something a little bit different, but it's German, it's Volkswagen, we have to accept that they come in these sorts of colours. General overall styling at the front, I'd give it a thumbs up. Now we get some nice features at the front of the car, and even though this is the base model vehicle, we get things like LED headlights, we've got parking sensors at the front, so they don't skimp out on things that you might think would be further up the range. We've even got things like adaptive cruise control as standard as well. So this is more like, on the previous generation, more like a mid-range model. So where the base models before, you wouldn't get things like adaptive cruise control, you wouldn't get the active park assist as standard. This entry-level Golf MK8 now does get all those features. So yeah, it is definitely more like a previous generation mid-range model. So looking at the side profile of the Golf, and it's very recognisable that this is a Volkswagen Golf. The front design has changed very slightly, just more because these headlights wrap around to the front bumper. But they haven't really messed with the tried and tested recipe, if you like. It's still recognisable as a Volkswagen Golf. You do get some nice touches though. You get things like the active park assist that I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the front of the car. That's normally standard on mid-range or top of the range cars in other manufacturers, so it's actually nice to see it stand on this base model. We've got 16-inch alloy wheels, which might seem a bit small, but I can remember back in the day when 16-inch alloy wheels were considered big. The good thing about having such small wheels, or what's considered small wheels nowadays, is you get a really comfortable ride because you get much more depth to the tyre wall. Coming round to the back of the Golf MK8, and the styling has been subtly improved. The LED tail lights again wrap into the rear tailgate, but they're slightly different shape to the Mark 7.5, so you can tell it's slightly different. And the rear bumper has been slightly resculptured as well. The nice thing I like about the rear of this car is the fact that there's no fake exhausts. You don't even get sort of the chrome trims where, you know, exhaust would normally be on a car. So there's none of this sort of, oh, I've got a pretend exhaust going on, which I actually quite like. The one thing I do like now is the fact that they've put the Golf badge just underneath the VW badge right in the middle of the boot lid. I actually think it looks quite classy, and I've noticed they've been doing that on a lot of their cars recently. The new Polo has done the same. It's got the Polo badge underneath the VW badge. I actually think it looks quite classy. Now, to open the boot, if you've had a Golf before, you'll be familiar with this. You literally just lift up the VW badge and you open your boot. It opens up to a fairly respectable 374 litres of boot space. And the boot floor is actually height adjustable. You've got a couple of heights so you can adjust it. So if you've got bigger items, you can lower the floor and still fit them in, which is a really good idea. You've even got neat little touches, like when you lift up the boot floor, these little hooks here just keep it open, so if you need to get your spare wheel out, it stops it whacking you on the head. Talking of spare wheels, you get the traditional space saver one in here, which is better than some cars which are now going away from having a spare wheel altogether. So there you go, there's the outside of the car. In terms of the exterior styling, I'll probably give it an 8 out of 10. It's not offensive, but then it's not too leery and crazy that you're going to sort of like, it's only going to sort of, you know, appeal to a certain amount of customers. I think they've done a sort of safe but an evolutionary job on the styling, which is sort of typical of German manufacturers. So let's have a jump onto the inside next, but before we do that, I just want to ask you to give a thumbs up to the video if you like it. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell to find out when the next review goes live. It really helps the channel to grow and helps me to bring you car reviews just like this Golf MK8. So coming into the new Golf MK8, and it looks very much more modern and cleaner than the 7.5. We'll come to that infotainment system in a minute, but it looks just a really nice place to be. The seats are lovely, the dashboard's well laid out, you've even got a leather steering wheel on this entry-level model. So let's actually step inside and have a better look. So first impressions looking at the dash and the infotainment display and everything that's in front of you. It's all very sort of simple, minimalistic. You've got this nice digital display in front of the driver. It is a little bit more of a basic version than you get in the higher grade models, where they've got the new InnoVision digital display, but this is perfectly acceptable. You've got a large fuel gauge readout on your left hand side. In the middle you've got a digital speedo, but on a button on the steering wheel you can switch that, so then you also bring out a traditional speedo as well as a digital one, although it is digital, and then you can flick it again and it brings out a rev counter, but again keeps a digital speedometer. And I actually quite like that. I think that's a nice sort of fairly clean design. Over on the right hand side you can actually adjust a few different functions here. So again, via the buttons on the steering wheel you can flick through different functions, and again you can change what you want to look at. So if you want to see what your consumption is, you can just have a look at that. That's your instant consumption. But again, you can change to something different as well. How long you've been driving for, etc., and how far you've driven. So it is fairly basic, but it's designed that there's not too much information to distract you whilst you're driving. Now the steering wheel itself, as I said a moment ago, is leather, and it's got the traditional sort of plastic buttons, if you like, whereas some of the higher grade models have got haptic buttons, which are gloss black plastic, and they kind of, you have to sort of push it in to make it click, if that makes sense, which I know you do on a normal button. If you've seen some other videos in the Golf, you'll understand what I mean. But this is very familiar. Again, if you've had a Golf before, your adaptive cruise control is over there on the left, and then on the right hand side that controls the instrument cluster in front of you, and is very, very simple to use. Coming over to the infotainment system, so this is the smaller of the two options that are available. On the higher grade models, a lot of it is all sort of capacitive touchscreen and sliding bars for volume and temperature controls for the climate control across this section here. Because this is the base model, we actually get a proper volume button, which is the on and off button as well, and on the right hand side another knob to tune your radio. So it's a little bit more basic than the upgrade model, but there are some benefits to that, and a lot of it is due to the fact that it is very basic to use. And what I mean by that is you're not trying to sort of slide along to do the volume control. You've just got a knob there to do your volume control, which is nice and easy and is less distracting when you're driving along the road. You don't get built-in sat-nav with this one, so you do have to rely on your phone, be it an Android or an Apple device, to plug in to use your sat-nav. Now that's not necessarily a problem, because just down below you've got two USB-C fast charging points. You do have to buy a different cable if you're an iPhone user like me, but if you've got an Android you've probably got one of these cables lying around already. Just in the middle there you'll see some buttons as well. You've got your hazards, you've got a parking menu which you just have to lightly touch on, and that will bring up a couple of different options for your parking system. The assist one will take you into your different driving assist modes. So you've got things like your radar cruise control. This one is just your lane changer system, your side assist. And this is what I like about Volkswagen. You can adjust the brightness of the light on the mirror. No other manufacturer I've seen actually does that, unless you spend a lot more money. You know, buy a Mercedes, an Audi or a BMW or something like that. But yeah, you can just literally get your finger, slide it up and down, and adjust how bright you want the light to be for the blind spot monitor. I think that's a really cool idea actually. So yeah, so that's your safety systems. That's very, very simple to use. The next button we've got down here is the climate control. Everybody I've been listening to has actually been really slating this, because they're saying it's like, you know, a bit distracting when you're trying to drive along and that type of thing. But I actually find it quite easy to use, and I like the simple nature of the dashboard. You might say that's because I'm a Volkswagen fan, but I also found that recently in the Skoda Octavia that I drove. So let's go back to the climate control. We can just go here to actually switch it on, and there's actually some preset options up here as well. So if you just want the fans to go to your feet or your hands, or cool your feet, you can actually do them straight away. It's actually quite easy to use. So as I said a minute ago, you've got a couple of USB-C fast charging points there. There's a nice little place to put your phone in there, and it does fit larger phones like my iPhone 12 Pro Max. It doesn't get wireless charging, but that is available on models further up the range, because the cars with wireless charging then also get wireless Apple CarPlay. So just behind that we've then got the new style electronic gear shifter. That again is actually really, really easy to use, and it's nice and sort of discreet. It doesn't take up a lot of room on the center console, and I quite like that. So that's just your reverse, neutral and drive, the button there to actually put the car into park, and your stop start button, and then behind that you've got the electronic handbrake. The only thing I find disappointing that's missing is this button here. I would assume is the auto hold function for the electric handbrake, which I've got on my Golf GTI, and I've seen on previous models of Golfs as well. So I'm guessing you probably get that the further you go up the range. I quite like this little cubby section here, so you can do things like pop your glasses or your sunglasses in them. I do find this plastic looks and feels slightly cheap, but then it's probably slightly better to have this than gloss black plastic, which, as we know, gets fingerprint scratches really easily. So actually this probably isn't too bad a solution, to be fair. Coming back, we've got a bit more storage here, and if you press this button, it brings out your cup holders. So it's actually variable, so depending on what size cup, as you put your cup in, you push your button and the little arm comes out and just clamps around your cup, which I think is quite a cool idea. The only downside is you've only got one of those, so you need to have a decent sized cup to go into this side, whereas that one you can obviously have any size cup you want. We've then also got another 12-volt socket in here. So yeah, a couple of USBs, 12-volt socket. Under the armrest there's a decent bit of storage under there as well. And the one thing I do like is the armrest is not only height adjustable, but you can slide it forward as well. So if you sit further forward, say if you're a bit shorter, you can actually adjust the armrest so you can still actually put your arm in it. Now the buttons you can see which are to the right of the steering wheel, that's where your headlight switches are kept. So you can see you've got the automatic function there, which is what most people leave their headlights on anyway. And you can just switch between the modes if you just want to put your dip lights on or whatever you can do. You've got the button to the right of that for the rear fog light, and then the two at the bottom are quick access functions so the two at the bottom are quick access functions to do your heated rear window and also a fast demist for your front windscreen without having to go into the menus for the air conditioning on the main infotainment system. So that's actually quite a handy idea. In terms of quality inside here, as you'd expect being German, there's very sort of nice sort of soft touch plastics here on the dash. I quite like this sort of fake aluminium sort of finish here that goes all the way across the dash from one side to the other. That's actually quite nice. It brightens the cabin up a little bit as well, because other than that, obviously, you know, you've got dark coloured seats, sort of dark door trims, dark dash, so that bit of aluminium effect trim does just brighten the cabin up slightly. So coming into the back of this new Golf, there's a decent amount of leg space. I do like the fact that you can actually get your feet under the driver's seat. So if your legs are a little bit longer than average, you can put them under there, which is particularly useful on a longer journey. I'm only 5'6", but I've got plenty of room here, and the driving seat is actually in my driving position, so loads of space there. Some manufacturers still don't put rear air vents in the back of their cars, especially small cars like something like Golf sized. But it's nice to see not only do Volkswagen give you rear air vents, there's actually temperature control in here for the climate control. So the passengers in the back can have a separate temperature to the people in the front, and I think that's awesome. I don't think I've seen many cars with rear air conditioning controls, unless you're spending probably twice the money that you're paying for this Golf. You've also got just down the bottom there, 2 more USB-C fast charging points, so people in the back can obviously charge phones, iPads and all the other electronic devices. Now normally I'd be talking now about the fact that it's got a fold down armrest with a couple of cup holders in it, but unfortunately on this base model you don't get that. So that's probably one of the things that I'd probably quite like to see in this base model. So it's a little bit disappointing, because, you know, surely everybody wants an armrest in the back for kids or whatever, because, you know, this is a small family car, so if you've got mum, dad, couple of kids, they're bound to want an armrest, they're bound to want to have somewhere to put their drinks. So that is a little bit of an oversight, I think, but, you know, I guess you kind of everything on a base model. You do get a nice bit of storage down here in the doors though, and it's nice to see that they're carpeted just like the ones in the front are as well. One thing that has amazed me in the time I've been spending in this car is how bright these interior lights are. Particularly at night time, they're LED lights, they are so bright that, you know, if kids are in the back reading a book, if you've stopped, you just pull over by the side of the road, you're checking your phone for something. It's so bright inside this car when you turn the interior lights on, it's really impressive. I actually quite like that. The plastic on top of the door trims isn't quite as nice as what you get in the front of the car, but then I don't suppose you're going to sit here tapping the door all day long, because that'd get annoying anyway, wouldn't it? But yeah, overall quality in the back is really, really good. So now that we've actually looked at all the features on the Golf, driving it is the last bit we need to actually check out. It carries over the 1.4 turbo 4-cylinder petrol engine from the 7.5 Golf, but instead of having the 7-speed dual clutch transmission, they've changed it to an 8-speed torque converter gearbox. From what I understand, that's to do with fuel quality and trying to go more towards sort of mainstream gearboxes, I suppose. Which is strange, because Volkswagen have had the DSG or dual clutch transmissions for years and years on Golf, so it's a bit of a departure from previous cars. And I'm pleased to report that new gearbox works really nicely. It's very smooth, you can hardly tell it's changing gear. It's not quite as good as the ZF gearbox that BMW put on all their cars, but it's pretty damn close. The ride is super comfortable as well. The 16-inch alloy wheels that I mentioned earlier, with those bigger profile tyres, certainly help a lot with the ride comfort. And it's very quiet in here as well. You can hear a bit of road noise and wind noise, but that's the same as any other car, but obviously that depends on what surface you're driving on. And it does feel actually nice inside the cabin. The seats are comfortable, the driving position's nice and comfortable, the steering wheel feels sort of nice in the hand, it's well weighted. The Golf has always been a good handling car, benefiting from the MQB platform that the sort of Volkswagen Audi group use for their small cars. And it's been around for quite a number of years now, so they've obviously made it better and better with each sort of like generation of cars, and they just improve it all the time. So it's not surprising that the ride and handling is top notch on this car. So obviously there's plenty of safety equipment on this new Mark 8 Golf. Autonomous braking, lane keeping aid, blind spot monitor, adaptive cruise, front and rear sensors, rear camera, 8 airbags. It's got the normal sort of stuff that you kind of expect on modern cars these days, which is good to see. They've actually moved the blind spot monitor light from on the glass of the mirror to the actual mirror housing itself, so it's closer to you, which is very similar to what Audi do with the A3. So the engine is carried over from the previous Mark 7 Golf. So it's the 1.4 litre turbocharged petrol engine. It develops 110 kilowatt and 250 newton meters of torque. And while the power output might not be top of the class, the way that the car puts the power down and actually drives along, it makes you think the car's either got more power, or Volkswagen have just been very clever in either the software tune or just the way they make it drive. Because you don't feel underpowered or like you want some more. It's just a really good car to drive. So there you have it. That is the Mark 8 Volkswagen Golf, the very base model. I actually really think it's a great little car. Yes, it's expensive because all cars are really expensive these days, but it has got a lot more equipment than it used to have to justify some of that price increase. It's got the different gearbox, and there's just enough difference between this and the previous Mark 7.5 to know that this is a new generation of Golf. I'm sure there's going to be more improvements coming on this model throughout the coming years with hybrids and electrics and bits and pieces like that. So it can only get better from here, I think. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to know what you think of this base model car as well. Because like I say, all the other reviews online have been of the GTI and the R-Line. So hopefully by bringing you this base model, you've learned something new about the Golf Mark 8 today. If you have enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so every time I put out a new car review, you'll get notified whenever it goes live. As always, if you've got any questions about this Mark 8 Golf, feel free to leave them in the comments below for me and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. Thanks very much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.